ABA Generalized. It's me, Anne, here with Erica and G, and a baby. Today, based on the poll results, we're going to talk about the challenges of ABA. There are positives, many positives in ABA, but it also comes with challenges. So we're going to talk about like the day-to-day challenges that we have faced personally, that hopefully our listeners can relate to. Well, I shouldn't say hopefully because we don't want these challenges, but I mean, it comes with the job. So
they're all relatable challenges is what Anna's getting after.
relatable, yes, they're relatable. Not, we don't want them, but yeah, relatable. That's the perfect word.
Relatable. Wow, G, you really got your mouth full over there.
Literally, if you're just listening, G's baby just put his whole fist in her mouth because apparently she's not allowed to talk on this episode.
I think the first thing that we should start with is just knowing that there's always going to be challenges, no matter where you are, what setting you're in. There are challenges, whether it's because of insurance, whether it's parent buy-in, whether it's teacher buy-in, whether it's you have to train the person that's going to be working directly with the child. There's so many factors to take into consideration. And I think that we were going to start with talking about how, intensive therapy is ABA, right? Like we provide intensive teaching. We prescribe a certain amount of hours, and we want to make sure that the child is obtaining, or the person, they might be an adult, is obtaining the correct amount of medical necessity, right? And I think that's something that we were talking about even off camera. It's so difficult because a lot of times we face a challenge of parents have such a small, tight schedule, and we want to be able to give them all the therapy that the child needs based upon their medical needs, but we're not always able to do that. Or vice versa, we have a smaller amount of medical need and the parent wants more stuff for the child. So I don't know if either of you want to touch base on that one too.
I can touch base real fast. I know that this was a big challenge in the clinic setting because the clinic is not a daycare, which I feel like a lot of parents viewed it as. So they wanted, 30 to 40 hours of ABA so that they would be there for, almost 8 hours a day, like a typical school or daycare day. And like that's not medically necessary in a lot of the cases. Yes, there was a very few amount that yes, the child needed that amount. But as I said, most kiddos didn't need that. So it's very difficult to tell a parent, well, hey, no, they're only prescribed, 20 hours. So like they're only here for half the day and then you have to fill the rest of it. I've also seen that, they have 30 hours prescribed or whatever, and the parents can't make that happen. That's too intensive for the parent. And it's hard. I mean, we definitely understand that the parents have, a lot of them are working full time. They have their own lives and schedules. And as Erica mentioned, like ABA is very intensive. So it's hard to juggle both. Kind of my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, and I can add to that, where I've seen both sides. I think it depends on the company, one, on how much they want to push, these are the hours that we prescribed, take it or leave it, or these are the hours that you prescribed, we understand you can't meet them all, so let's work with you. So I've seen kind of both sides of that. And I think ethically, if a family can't commit to the fully prescribed hours, I think it's better to get some of the hours rather than just be pushed away. I mean, that's my opinion. It's still, even if it's not as intensive, it still will help. And I mean, maybe like we've seen this where like in the summer, maybe their schedule opens up, or like over holiday breaks, maybe their schedule opens up so that you're able to work with them a little bit more.
And even hit
You
those
know,
hours that you originally wanted to do, right?
yeah.
And you struck something with me, Anne, when you said like the whole fact of, we're prescribing this and it's either take it or leave it, right? And it takes me back to, we were talking about this, I think in the group chat a couple weeks ago, about how unfortunately a family was denied services or was told, you have to have, or what was it? Was it they were denied? And then
They were, so I don't know if we should even bring up, I mean, she's a pretty big person on social media, but they were receiving,
I mean, it's all over the
AB,
social media at this point.
they were receiving ABA. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to bring it up because we didn't get her permission, but like there was something on social media pretty big, I think, that happened, that where a child was getting ABA and then started going to school. And so the ABA company said, we cannot serve you anymore because you can't commit to the full prescribed hours, which is like, so you're basically telling the family to pull their child out of school?
Like,
why? Like that sounds like a big, like, we need your money more than that kid needs school. Like that's what I hear.
Will say that a company I have worked for was pretty adamant in the same way of like, if you cannot commit to this, you should go look otherwheres or other, wow, let me try that again. You should go look elsewhere for services, because
But is it in the sense of take your kid out of school so that they can meet your hours? Like,
no, but they would just say we are no longer like probably capable to serve you your hours. They wouldn't say pull your kid out, but I don't think that they would be staying at the company that I'm thinking of.
Well, I think things have been resolved since then, thankfully.
But it was a huge thing on like LinkedIn. It was on social media. It was everywhere. And, I think coming from like our perspective too, we see this like as such a, I don't know. I feel like it's so controversial because at the same time, like we want to make sure that we're providing what is needed, but at this, like, I don't know. I just think that it's such a controversial topic to even talk about because we want to make sure that the child is getting exactly what they need and what we're prescribing, but there is no reason why a company should be like, or even just a provider, right? Like a provider as a whole should say, oh, no, you need to do X, Y, and Z for them to still obtain X, Y, and Z hours, or, for that intensive therapy. But I don't know. That's also kind of like just my personal opinion, especially because like it just also helps. It not helps. It also then brings that bad name to ABA again, right? Like of saying like a lot of companies are money hungry, or just in general, like not trying to help the child and provide that what's compassionate care, right? We need to make sure we are providing that compassionate care. I feel like I'm going down a different rabbit hole, so I need to stop.
Anywho, it's okay. No, I think like,
go ahead, Anne.
It's just frustrating. It's just frustrating that it's like we got in this field to help, and then when we have insurance providers saying you need this, or if you're in a specific company that's like you need to talk to this family to get them to open up their availability or else, and it's like, well, like, no. Like sometimes you just have to put your foot down and be like, that's not what I'm here to do. Like I don't care if this is the prescribed amount. This is just me. Like I don't care what the prescribed amount is. I want to help your kid as much as possible, and if you're not available, I want to work with you. Like we're all about collaboration too. That's in our ethics code, is to collaborate. And stakeholders, like we need to collaborate with the stakeholders too. They're involved in that. And meeting hours or not meeting hours or being flexible with time, that's part of it. And now I'm on a rant. I'm mad.
No, I totally agree. I will say that that's been one thing like that I have preached since being an ABA. Sorry, there's a child screaming in the background. Okay, good. that has been like my one thing of, I love ABA. I love what I'm able to do. I love working with the kids. And that is honestly the reason I've stayed and I'm, in field. But my biggest con that has almost taken me away several times is how much the insurance companies don't care about the kids, and how they are literally just a name on a piece of paper and they're not human beings is what it seems like to me. And that has always been the one thing that really just drives like a nail in my side, and I absolutely hate.
Well, we used to have to do, and you probably remember, and I don't know if you had to do it when you moved either, but at our old company, we had to do peer-to-peer calls for certain insurances. And
yes.
they were, oh my gosh, I always dreaded them. My first one, I felt like the dumbest person in the entire universe getting off of that call, because I felt like I didn't know what I was talking about, because they talk you in circles.
They question every one of your goals. I don't know if this has happened to you, but I've had one where like they went through every single goal I made and questioned every single one. And I'm like, I wouldn't have made these goals based off this assessment if it wasn't a need.
Yep.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Well, my thing that I struggled with, I'm like 100% remembering this. This had to have been 2 years ago. It was like right before I moved, because I was in the car outside of the place that I had to get fingerprinted and for the company I was going to move to before moving down here. So I remember very vividly, like I was sitting in the car doing this peer-to-peer call, because I was like, this is the only time they had available. And I was explaining, child has not had an RBT in months. You want to deny RBT services right now when they have had not one RBT for months? That makes no sense to me. Why do I have to justify this to you? And then you still say at the very end of the call, I'm going to be denying you still. After they told me you could state your case, maybe I'll change my mind. And then they're like, oh no, sorry, we can't change our mind. It's based upon the protocol. I get it. They're humans as well on the other side of the phone. But at the same time, like I'm talking to a doctor that doesn't even know this kid, right? Like, and I deal with that, and like, it's wild to me. It's absolutely wild.
It is wild. I've had, before I moved, I had a case who we were planning to fade services, but it was the end of the school year. So it made sense to carry those services, and an off was coming up. So I had to do this report and prepare for the summer and the next school year. So, and I don't know if this is the same across states, but in there, it was every 6 months you had to do a re-auth. And primary insurance denied the services because I didn't want to fade them at the beginning of the school year, when there would be a new teacher, new grade, new kids in the class, new everything that this kid had to get used to again. So I was like, why start pulling services before, like, set him up for failure? And like, I fought what did we call them? Program coordinators? I don't know. Like, they fought with me. Service coordinators. Yeah. They fought with me. They were like, listen, you're going to get pushback. Like, this is what you need to say. This is what you need to do. And I was like, I was so frustrated. And luckily, the secondary insurance did cover the services. So they picked up whatever was denied. It wasn't fully denied. It was like a partial denial. So they only approved a set amount of hours that they deemed medically necessary. When I wanted the RBT in there more, and then we could quickly fade like that. They weren't looking at like the fade plan. We're like, okay, let's get through the first month and then we can fade the RBT. Like, it's like, that's easy. But luckily, yeah. Go ahead.
No. Like that, I think these are all things that we see even across, we see them across states. We've seen them across companies now. Like, these are obviously issues that like are not minor and not going anywhere, because obviously they would have been solved by now. But I want to kind of transition to one thing that Erica had mentioned about like not having RBTs on cases. Because I feel, as the RBT, I felt like I was being stretched super thin because we didn't have enough RBTs. And it was like, well, why don't you just get put on this case and put on this case and put on this case? And it's like, when's my break? I'm now working 40 hours, which as an RBT, like actual 40 billable hours is insane.
Which is insane. Like
Yeah.
I never met 40 hours as an RBT or a BCBA until I worked for a school district.
Oh, no, I did consistently.
No,
Because
no,
the amount
that's
of
insane.
cases that I was staffed on as an RBT, like I remember being pulled to even sub if I had a gap. And it was like a random gap that I would text my BCPI and be like, hey, I mean, this client canceled last minute. Do you have anything that I can hop on? I was already connected to like half of her caseload anyways. So I just would hop over if the kiddo didn't have a tech that day and just kind of ease my way in. But like, it's wild. Like the amount of hours that RBTs want to obtain, first of all, right? Because pay is, oh, I did not mean to do that. Oh my gosh. My computer, it just did a thumbs up thing. I think that the challenge there is like the pay for RBTs is not consistent across companies. It's all over the place, right? And that's how it is even for BCBAs. But BCBAs, we are salaried, so it looks a little different. Yes, you can have that hourly wage as well, but right. And so I think that what makes it difficult is, you know, you're trying to earn a living as anyone would in our field, but we come across the difficulty of like, if we don't have a certain amount of hours, we're not going to get benefits. And if we don't get benefits, well, then we need to make sure that we are getting paid enough so we can pay for medical stuff in general, right? So it's all cyclical. And I think that for me personally, like before I got married, I worked my butt off because I needed insurance myself. And so like I was paying for my own insurance in addition to working 40 plus hours a week whenever I could. So I picked up hours all the time. Really get that, G. Like there's like no breaks.
And I guess like another point is like drive time. So like as an RB, I mean, well, a BCBA as well, like you're obviously you don't have all your clients in one location. Even with a clinic setting, I was still driving from homes to clinic to back to homes, you know, whatever. I was going back and forth. In my experience, I've only had one company, and again, it seems very rare for around here, that would actually pay me for my drive time.
This is what I was curious about this because in California, they are very adamant that your drive time is separate than your lunch. So when they make your schedule, because there are schedulers here, even like talking to other BCBAs who are more familiar with the area, in the companies that they worked with, you would get your drive time and then you would have your lunch scheduled in separate. And I'm like,
oh no,
in Pennsylvania.
Our drive time was our lunch.
Yep, that's what I said. I've brought this up before where I'd be driving to another client, pumping, eating my lunch all at the same time because that was the only break. My only breaks were the driving. Yep. And here they were like, no, that can't be right. That can't be legal. So, and I don't know if it's legal or not, but that's how it was.
I mean, that is how, again, most companies here are running things. That is kind of what makes this company stands out is they do pay you for your actual drive time and your miles. Nice. And then they have like, if your client cancels, there's ways to get paid. Again, this is the only company in the area that I have heard of it. And that was one of the reasons I stayed. But previously, a lot of companies, I feel like, only pay you for your miles. They don't pay you for the physical time driving. Yep. And where I'm at, that drive could be literally 4 miles, but it's taking me 30 minutes because of how much traffic and everything else. Yep. So what's going on there?
Well, yeah, because you would work and I would talk to my husband about this all the time. Like he would be like, you're gone 8 hours of the day and you work 6 hours. Yep. And we're like, and I wouldn't get paid for that. I wouldn't get paid for that time.
I don't get paid for drive time still. You can if you're hourly, but salaried you cannot, which I mean, it is what it is. It's fine at the end of the day. I wish that there was that ability, but my RBTs do get paid for that drive time. So I think that's even better because a lot of times they are going from like, I don't know, you have like having that time from like one location to the next is nice. It's just that extra little cushion that you receive so that it's more incentive to like stack your cases. I mean, granted, I still do that. I stack all my cases as much as possible. So this way, like I'm done earlier, or like I can get as many kiddos in a day as possible. Um, but I guess then we can kind of like go into like more of that cost and accessibility stuff. So like in terms of like ABA and receiving ABA, we kind of talked about that a little bit. Well, not a little bit, a lot of it. But you know, I feel like it's interesting to also hear how Amanda last week was talking about how hard it was to kind of like obtain services at first, right? Like getting the authorization and getting through insurance. And if insurance didn't approve it, she said she would have had to take out a second mortgage. So I think like that's wild to even think like if you want ABA, like insurance doesn't always like primary insurance doesn't always approve of it. It's difficult. It depends on where you are. And I think that plays a huge factor in why people don't always get services because they're having difficulties with obtaining it through insurance. It's wild to think like how many things that you have to change in a behavior plan because insurance actually won't approve of that today. They did like last authorization, but they're not going to do it anymore. Like, okay, cool, great. So that's something I'm dealing with right now with a client. Like I had a peak assessment and now they're not approving a peak. And that's a whole other thing. So
well, that's where I can kind of jump in and share like what I was sharing before we started recording. Like we were servicing kiddos at home and they went off to camp, where if you've met these two children, they definitely needed services at camp. They're crazy, but I love them. And it took 2 weeks of observations. The camp was only 6 weeks long. So it took 2 weeks of observations, finally got enough observations to put in the authorization, all that. It took 2 weeks for the authorization to come back, get that all in place. And all said and done, I ended up going to the camp for 3 days. And at that point, yes, the kiddos made it through, but the counselors really struggled with having them in the group. It was, an extra task for the counselors to, keep them engaged and keep them with the group and not eloping or not refusing to, sorry guys, not refusing to like do work and everything. So authorizations are tricky.
they really are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially like, if you're switching locations, right? Insurances need an auth for home versus an auth for school, requires observations in each of those settings. So you can't prescribe, you could prescribe the same amount of hours if it's medically necessary, but you need to see the client in that specific setting. And I think that can be challenging because you're right. If like a camp is 6 weeks long, or even I've had situations where like a camp was a week long and parents wanted support because they were afraid that, the kid would tantrum or whatever. And this has happened to me. Luckily, this one instance, we were already talking about feeding services. And I did go in to observe camp to try to get any ABC data, but they didn't need support. And luckily it was only a week long, and I don't think it was an all day long camp. Might have only been a few hours. And it was in a familiar setting to the client too. So I think that helped, but I think like that is hard. Parents might expect services in a new setting, but you have to wait, you have to do the observations and then send it to insurance and then wait for insurance to, so there is going to be a time in the new setting where they are not supported.
Yeah. And that doesn't help with our generalization and our, ability to help kiddos transfer the skills that they've learned in one setting to another, right? Like that's I feel like we jump through hoops so often when we want to just support our kiddos. And I feel like that's literally been the premise of this conversation for the last 40 minutes. Like we like tangent on tangent about the hoops that we have to go through. I mean, I guess that is challenges of ABI as a whole. But I think
unless you're in schools and then you don't have to deal with insurance, and that is beautiful.
Oh my goodness. But no, I think that might be like a good place for us to kind of wrap up, and we can probably do a part 2 on this. I feel like there is more we can absolutely talk about, and like we said in like one of the very first episodes, like this is going to be a continual conversation that we have, and
yeah. And I also, for those who have made it this long and are still listening, if you I would be curious, like, are you guys, like, wherever you are in whatever state, like, are you seeing this as an RBT, as a BCBA? Are there things that we didn't touch on that you're also seeing as like a consistent challenge? Definitely email us or message us on Instagram or any of those platforms, because I am definitely curious to know if again, this is happening in other states, and if again, there's other problems that are consistently coming up.
Yeah, for sure. But if you want to be a guest on ABA Generalized, you can email us at aba.generalized. Oh, no, I'm already messing that up because I don't have all the information up. Not my fault that G deleted all of it, and it's right there. It wasn't there, but I'm gonna redo it. I'm not.
Wow, I really did delete it completely off this document.
Yes. And I was about to do it from memory, and I'm still gonna try and do it from memory for the most part.
I can do it if not, my bad.
So I'm gonna try my best.
Wait, is it completely gone? Hold on,
It's completely
I don't see it
gone.
at all.
So
Oh my God.
Email us.
Well, don't ask me to do it.
Who've been with us for this long probably know by now, and people that have been guests on here, we have to warn them. We most likely have either a second screen or at least like some sort of screen to help us like guide us and make sure that we are staying on topic. 1 and 2. So this way we like are making sure that we are staying on time too. And then it has also our little blurb of like everything. G, are you typing it in right now? Okay, so if you want to be a guest, email us at aba.generalized.podcast@gmail.com. Our Instagram is ABA Generalized the Pod. Our YouTube is ABA Generalized. And rate, review, and subscribe. Don't forget, do it. Please and thanks. And we love to hear from you guys. So please like reach out to us. We want to get your feedback. All right. Well, bye.
ABA Generalized, the podcast, is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.